What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, this week, Nintendo decided to issue a very strange update that certainly surprised a lot of people because it's for a platform that they no longer support, and it got quite the reaction from the homebrew community online. We'll go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Sony potentially having some more issues with another game. We just talked about them and Deviation, how it appears that title could be canceled. Now it looks like another one could be heading for the same fate. Oh, and we'll also be going over PlayStation VR 2 because it looks like we have some solid numbers to go on to compare it to the original PlayStation VR to see how it's doing. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Final Fantasy 16. We are officially less than 1 month away from the game releasing, and I'm very excited. Even though we've seen preview after preview after preview for it, it does look better and better every time it's shown. And there is one thing that I think it's kind of going a bit under the radar, but it's a big deal, especially for the preservation side of things with video games, and also people who don't want to have to download 40 or 50 gigabytes on day one, and that's that the game may not have a day one patch. And we can see this posted up over on Game Informer, who went over this while talking with director Hiroshi Takai and Naoki Yoshida. Now, the reasoning for this, why there may not be a day one patch, is because they're very confident in its final build of 16, but they also go on to say that the other reason is that he and the producer, again, Yoshida on the game, believes that the game should be ready to go at launch, recognizing that not everyone has access to the internet needed to download a day one patch in light of Final Fantasy XVI's global simultaneous release. So essentially, you'll be popping the disc into your PS5. It'll install from the disc, and that'll be it. There won't be a day one patch to go along with that, clean up or essentially finish the game in some cases, as we've seen. So I do like that we will have everything right there on the disc, which is becoming more and more of a rarity as we go through this generation. Oh, and last week, of course, we did have Mortal Kombat 1 unveiled. The only issue was there was no gameplay. It was all a CGI trailer. And while it sounds really cool with some of the ideas, we need to see it in action, right? It looks like we won't have to wait too much longer. This was posted up by Jeff Keighley for the Summer Game Fest, saying, "Don't miss the world gameplay premiere of Mortal Kombat 1 when Ed Boon joins Jeff Keighley live on stage." Of course, that is happening Thursday, June 8th. Jeff did mention this in his interview, I believe, with Epic Game Store, where he said that there would be points in time during the show where they'll kind of just hang out and talk about a game that they're showcasing. In this case, Mortal Kombat 1, and it's good that we'll at least see Ed Boon talk about the game as well as the game being played, because I'm really curious about several things. The big one obviously being the cameo fighters. How will they interact with the fight as it goes along? Really the inputs, the controls. Is it still going to be classic Mortal Kombat? Are they doing some sort of spin on that? And then obviously the visuals and how smooth the whole thing looks in motion as they're playing it. So it's exciting stuff that we won't have to wait too much longer, because I am pretty excited for Mortal Kombat 1, especially after seeing some of the downloadable characters, which, hey, maybe they'll unveil a couple of them there too. Oh, and if you're someone who saw the Backbone controller for iPhones, and of course that working alongside of your PlayStation 4 Remote Play, but you have an Android device, I have good news, as the Android version of the Backbone is available right now. You can see this was posted up over on the PlayStation blog, where they say that Backbone 1 PlayStation Edition launches on Android today. It is $100, which still feels kind of expensive for an attachment on your phone that is essentially just a controller with it, but it is themed after the DualSense. It's officially licensed, all of this. So if you're someone who's had experience with it and you've been waiting for it to show up on Android, now's your chance to pick it up again, going for $99.99. The idea of attaching that to my phone and using that as my primary device to play on the go still is a little strange for me. Feels like confining my phone to that would be kind of an issue at times. But if you have an older phone, you could pretty much leave it in this grip around the house and technically use it as like a little PlayStation handheld that connects through your router. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with this update that Nintendo put out there randomly the other day, and this is for the 3DS. And it's very weird because the 3DS obviously is not supported by Nintendo. They shut the eShop down completely, so you kind of figured they would then move along and just forget about the 3DS and basically become a legacy device, and they would not push any more updates. Until the other night when randomly it was shown over on Twitter with a bot that kind of tracks this that it did happen, and we can see this over on Nintendo Everything, who says a new 3DS system update has just been made available, specifically version 11.17.0-50. And if you look at the official patch notes, it's about what we'd expect. Further improvements to overall system stability and other minor adjustments have been made to enhance the user experience. Of course, we know there's more to the story here, so we have to go to some of the sources online that dig into the firmware, which we can see Oatmeal Dome here says, while the patch notes only contain the usual stability line, according to the bot, system storage, eShop app, internet browser, these are all updated. So it's quite a bit going on underneath the hood. And to go a bit further here, again from Oatmeal Dome, saying, judging by the reports I've been seeing from the 3DS homebrew community, it looks like Nintendo patched the banner bomb exploit in 11.17.0.50, which explains why system settings were updated. And there was a tweet that exploded online, which you can see here from the Shane Cube, who says, if you haven't hacked your 3DS yet, don't update it yet. Looks like this most recent update has essentially broken the usual process to unlock your 3DS. Now, if your 3DS is already modded, and I know the whole joke and meme going around is it's very easy to soft mod your 3DS, you're actually fine. Apparently, you can just go about your day normally, update all this, and it won't be a problem. But because it patches out the exploit that essentially gets you to a soft modded 3DS, you don't want to update until it's modded, if that's what you're planning to do. Again, it's less of an issue for a lot of people considering Nintendo themselves have just moved on from the 3DS. And it is interesting to see Nintendo go back and issue a patch that essentially wipes the ability to run this exploit. I'm not really sure why they would do that, considering they've moved completely away from it, even with the digital selling and purchasing of these different games. Unless there was just a security issue they found that just happened to also patch this banner bomb exploit, because we do know that there were situations that actually got kind of malicious in nature with different games that were being played on things like the Wii U, and it's possible there were different things with the 3DS that just happened again patch this banner bomb exploit. However, if there's one thing I've learned, it's not to underestimate the homebrew community, because most likely they'll come together and figure out a way to continue exploiting the 3DS, and we would like to assume that Nintendo is going to be moving on from the system, and that includes updating with different security patches, although I guess the PS3 still randomly gets updates, so who knows. But yeah, as of now, if you're planning on soft modding your 3DS, I guess don't update it and soft mod it first. But again, I have a feeling the homebrew community will probably get this sorted out pretty soon. Next up, let's talk about a PlayStation game that does appear to be in trouble. And we had heard about this before, but now it sounds like the game might not even come out. And I did see this before, and then I saw what happened at Deviation. I said, oh, well, okay, hold on. Maybe there's a bit more going on here. So I also wanted to look around myself. But first, let's take a look. This was posted up and transcribed by Idle Sloth, who, quoting Jeff Grubb over on his GamesBeat podcast, says, we've got Ubisoft lineup for the next fiscal year, and there's no mention of Prince of Persia Remake at all. Yeah, Prince of Persia Remake sounds like that went back in the oven for a little while, is what I'll say. But he goes on to further say, I still think Prince of Persia Remake will come out before KOTOR. I don't think the KOTOR Remake will ever come out. All right, so this is an interesting one. Obviously, it's a high-profile remake. It was announced at the last PlayStation Showcase, September 9th, 2021. Remember, that was the same showcase where Spider-Man 2 was announced. And this was a big one because Sony clearly came in, funded parts of it, and had it as a PlayStation 5 exclusive, which is, if you know the history of KOTOR, it was on the original Xbox as an exclusive, not on the PS2. Certainly flipped the table a bit there, and it being then just on the PlayStation 5. However, we know there was turbulence behind the scenes, as Aspyr seemed to be a bit in over their head. There were, like, the director and others were fired on the project, and then the entire thing was shifted over to Saber Interactive, and that's the last we've heard of this. And now it sounds like, from what I've been able to gather, the game's in a lot of trouble. And again, Kind of a problem because it's a high profile title, not one that'll just quietly go away. The situation with Deviation is different because we have no idea what they were working on, and the only reason we know that it's most likely canceled is because there was a large number of layoffs all at once, and now we're kind of thinking that Deviation may eventually sort of fade into the background, but very prominently shown at a PlayStation Showcase here with Rev in there with the lightsaber and all this. Something tells me it's going to have to be addressed one way or the other if it does end up getting canceled. Now, I do think some of that is Jeff Grubb sort of speculating a bit just based on its current state, which, as I mentioned, not great right now, but Jason Schreier did report previously on a lot of the stuff that was going on with Aspire and Saber, and most likely, if there is something like that going on behind the scenes where we're to the point where we're questioning if the game will even come out, he'll probably have a follow-up report, or you'll hear from Embracer or Sony. I mean, that someone's going to say something about this game if it's not coming out. Otherwise, maybe it'll just be in development for the next 7 or 8 years or something and just randomly pop up down the road. So, hey, I'm hoping it comes out because, wow, that would be one of the wildest teases ever, is if you have this announced, KOTOR fans through the roof excited, and then it ends up falling apart behind the scenes and gets canceled. That'll be a rough day if that gets announced and that actually happens. Next up, let's talk about a very weird situation that happened here with that Inspector Gadget game, which we had talked about previously. It doesn't look like it's going to be a big game or anything like that. I think it's like a budget price of $40. But hey, it's an Inspector Gadget game. It's been a long time since we've had one of those, and I guess you could call this one the most ambitious Inspector Gadget game that we've ever had, just even based on the screenshots. But the big thing that was pointed out is there was no Xbox version announced. I mean, they had every other platform there, but nothing with Xbox. And that was sort of following up the whole thing that happened with the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters, and people are wondering, why are games just skipping Xbox? Well, Microids, who's behind the Inspector Gadget game, actually took to Twitter and said, hey, if there is enough demand for an Xbox version, yeah, we could technically do that, but hey, people have to speak up. This happened earlier yesterday. And then hours later, they tweeted this out right here, where they say, Xbox gamers, we've heard you loud and clear. Aware of the strong demand for this title, we have worked hard, and now we can assure you that Inspector Gadget Mad Time Party will be available on Xbox Series XS and Xbox One in digital format. Okay, so clearly they've record time to figure out how to get the Xbox port ready to roll. I mean, it's not out right this second or anything like that, obviously, but all of a sudden they've rolled it into their plans, whereas before it wasn't there. Again, it's very odd. Well, now people were calling for this to get ported to the Xbox. There was a sizable response, I'll say, more so than what Microids usually has with their interaction on their tweets, for people saying, yes, bring it to Xbox. So hey, now they're going to bring it to the platform, and I guess they'll be able to observe the sales and see if it was worth doing. And that's the only thing I think of is before this, they figured it wouldn't sell well on the Xbox, but it would sell enough on the other platforms. I mean, it's not going to sell crazy numbers anyway, but hey, at this point, the people on Xbox have spoken, and I guess we'll see if the game does well now when it releases. It's definitely a strange one, I would say, to make the big push to get ported over. You feel like you'd really have hammered Square or something with Final Fantasy Pixel remasters, but here we are with Inspector Gadget being called on, and now getting a port for the Xbox. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about PlayStation VR 2. There have been a lot of questions around how this device is performing, especially compared to the original PlayStation VR, just in overall units sold. Sony's been pretty quiet about this. Even Jim Ryan, when asked, was like, it's a little early to give a solid answer on how it's doing in the long run, right? But we did have a webcast that took place with Jim Ryan and Herman Hulst, essentially going over the entirety of the PlayStation business, their plans for the future, and how they've been doing over the last fiscal year. And there was this slide, this is page 18, that goes over the PlayStation VR 2. In fact, they call it a strong launch for the VR 2, and they do compare it to the PlayStation VR. They're released on the PS4, of course, 6 weeks from launch, and the PSVR 2 is indeed tracking above it by about 8%. Now, that's not an incredible jump over that original PlayStation VR, but still, it is an improvement. Coming up at about 600,000 units is how they have it set up here. Again, weeks 1 through 6 globally, and that would only take into account when they're selling it on their PlayStation Direct store. And I think given the price, and I'll still say I want to say it's not the limited lineup, but it's not a very flashy lineup. Like, there's nothing there that people are talking about like crazy, like, you gotta get the PSVR 2 for this title. Although, that's what I would expect the showcase to have, at least one title there that people are really intrigued by. At least enough to spend more than the system, more than $500 to get this headset. But still, based on this, I think at least it's a good start for the PSVR 2. Although the first PSVR was off to a slower start, and then it really started to pick up. If you look at even the line that they've shown here, you can see that first VR headset kind of creeping up on VR2. But again, I think if they have some compelling software here at the showcase, which I've been hearing that this is going to be a really good show, go figure, then yeah, I think they would, of course, work to spike and push sales for the PSVR 2, but certainly not as bad as people were estimating, we'll say, especially from different analysts who said a price cut was needed for the PSVR 2, or they're in big trouble. 600,000 units, not jumping off the page, but also not like, oh, they're completely doomed with this headset. Just kind of right there in the middle. We'll see what the showcase has for us, though, later on today. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're going to take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, which June video game release are you most excited for? 50% said Final Fantasy 16. I figured that was going to be first place. A lot of hype around this game, right? A lot of anticipation. But I was curious about second place. It did tie Diablo 4 and Street Fighter 6. And then AEW Fight Forever edged out Crash Team Rumble, which I was expecting it to kind of be at the last place for that one. But yeah, Final Fantasy 16, really looking forward to that. But also, I am going to be playing Diablo 4 and Street Fighter 6 and AEW Fight Forever. It's looking like a pretty good month, I'd say. So exciting stuff here coming up. And once again, that'll just close out the first half of 2023. Is it possible this could be one of the best games ever in gaming? We'll see what the second half brings, I guess. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Random, who says, I'm really hoping for the best with the AEW game. Wrestling games arguably hit their peak on the N64 and a few have reached the quality of gameplay as they did since. I actually think the wrestling games really peaked during the PS2 and GameCube era. I don't really say Xbox because the wrestling games on Xbox just were not very good. But on the PS2, I remember when SmackDown Shut Your Mouth came out, that was the big aha moment where it's like, can games get any better than this? Like, visually speaking and all this. And then Here Comes the Pain came out, and that took it to the next level. And I still look at that as the best wrestling game ever made. So the GameCube, while it had a slow start with 18 and 19, Day of Reckoning 1 and 2 were really, really good games. But something about that generation, especially on the PS2 side with the SmackDown games, I just think they're still untouched this day. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Whereas Nintendo randomly updating the 3DS, making the homebrew community sweat a bit. And then also, what about Knights of the Old Republic Remake potentially being in so much trouble that it could be canceled? And then, of course, Microids randomly changing their mind for an Xbox port, or do you think they had it planned all along and this was a really good publicity stunt? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.